Welcome to our webcast, Improving Health Equity, Resources and Solutions, dedicated to sharing tools and resources across medical and healthcare organizations. I'm Barbara Lewis. Joining me today is Dr. Ellen Pearlman, who will discuss the Antiracism Module funded by a generous grant from the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation. Ellen wrote the section of the module titled Antiracism in Action. Ellen is Senior Associate Dean for Education at the Frank H. Netter, MD, School of Medicine at Quinnipiac University. Previously, she served in a variety of leadership roles at the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra University, including Associate Dean for the Advanced Clinical Experience and Associate Dean for Professionalism and Doctoring Skills, while also serving as a career advisor for the surgical subspecialties and a co-advisor for the school's chapter of the Gold Humanism Honor Society. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you so much, Barbara. It is such an honor to be invited to speak about this important topic and this project, which has been amazing, especially given this current political climate.
Definitely, yes. So tell us about how you got involved with the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation grant to create the Antiracism Module, and specifically how to write the chapter on anti-racism in action.
Oh, goodness, I'm trying to remember. So I've known Dennis Novak, one of the principal investigators on this grant, for over 2 decades. Both from the Academy of Communication and Healthcare and his work on doc.com, as well as more recently through the Academy on Professionalism in Healthcare and his work on professional formation. My colleague, Alice Fernari, and I were both in the first cohort of the LEAP Fellowship through the Academy of Professionalism in Healthcare. And our joint project was on longitudinal faculty development on anti-racism and allyship. And so I'm pretty sure that's how Dennis heard about our project and invited both of us to participate. And I just was so thrilled. I've always admired Dennis and his work, what he has accomplished, and how he has contributed and continues to contribute to medical education has been a real inspiration for me.
He's an amazing person. And he came up with this idea of the anti-racism module as a result of a session that he went to. And the person who was presenting was talking about the issues of microaggressions. And he then immediately walked out with the dean and said, we need to do something about it. And that's how this module actually came about.
It's incredible.
So, was it because of your previous work that you decided to focus on the anti-racism in action? Is that why you decided to write that specific section?
Yeah, like many of us in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, there were lots of diversity workshops that were popping up. But most of them were really aimed at increasing knowledge and awareness, and there were very few initially that were focused on skill development. And so I really wanted to work on a section that focused on concrete skills so that the user could walk away from the module with some real tangible skills. And so that's why I chose to work on allyship in action.
So what specific skills can you share with us, some of the ones that you included in the module?
Yeah, so first, kind of defining what it means to be an ally and how that's different from being a friend or an activist. I think that's important, and really looking at some of the literature that demonstrates how effective allies can be. And then there's a big focus there on speaking up and calling attention to when microaggressions are made and how, especially in the medical environment for trainees, how to speak up against the hierarchy. And really what's amazing that Dennis has added is a lot of videos that he created using actual medical students and demonstrating how they managed to speak up and speak up across the hierarchy in such a beautiful way. And so I think that's the big focus in this module, is really how to speak up in a way that's effective. And then, a few just things about what it means to really focus on people who are impacted by words, and the comments that are made, and really how also to leverage your own privilege, and how to avoid, the behaviors that come out of guilt and shame, being white, which D'Angelo has talked about as white fragility. And then really learning how to yield the floor to other people, to speak up. So those are some of the skills that we focus on.
And that's Beverly D'Angelo, is that correct?
Robin
Oh, Robin.
D'Angelo.
Oh,
Yeah.
Robin. Okay. And I believe that the module has some of her YouTube videos in it. I think that.
They may be resources. I'm trying to remember now. I know that that the module has the TED Talk by Loretta Ross, which is really amazing.
So it has quite a few videos from YouTube. Actually, there's almost 40 videos altogether, just little snippets. Some of them are from YouTube, but there's quite a few actually videos that were shot specifically for the module. And these videos are about people's real life
Yes.
experiences with microaggression. And how do you respond? And what are people's responses? So it must be very hard in a situation, especially hierarchical, where you have maybe an attending who says something, it might be intentional, probably not, it might be unintentional. And then how do you speak up? But that's what your portion of the module does.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say that the videos that he did with the students really demonstrate it so clearly, which is, um, how do you bring up the issue with curiosity and approach it from a place of curiosity? How do you call someone in rather than calling them out in a way that would be humiliating or embarrassing them? And really just exploring, the person's intentions, and being able to describe how the impact of their words was different from what they intended. Um, and he does so many different videos where med students are able to do this in such a beautiful way.
Mhm. And we just mentioned the resources, but I wanted to also talk about the literature that you did, the literature review for this. And much of that literature, of course, is listed and footnoted in all the sections of the module. And there are 18 sections of the module, and anti-racism in action is just one of those. So what surprised you about your research, if anything?
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd say that there are really kind of three transformative concepts for me personally. And I've talked a bit about them already, but just to kind of solidify them, I think the first is that um, this idea that silence is equivalent to being complicit. Um, that when we hear, particularly in the learning environment, comments that reflect bias, comments that are racist, comments that are oppressive, that when no one speaks up, um, we are allowing it just to be there, and we are complicit in its bias and its oppression. I think that was really a fundamental concept for me, and how important that is if we want to change our learning environments, that we need to start speaking up. And the second was the difference between intent and impact, that having good intentions doesn't reduce the impact of hurtful words, and that when we make, inadvertent microaggressions that we tend to focus on our intentions and trying to clarify our intentions. But when we do that, we really are centering ourselves and not the person who is impacted. And that it's really important to focus the person who was impacted and who was harmed by my words. And I really learned that I was going to have to figure out how to put my own shame and guilt kind of in the parking lot in order to attend to the impacted person. And then I'd say kind of the third concept was Loretta Ross's, and the TED Talk is in the module. Reframing calling out, calling in was just such a big aha moment for me. Suddenly I could see a path forward for learning how to speak up in uncomfortable situations, and that I could do it from a place of love, from curiosity, and from a desire to build relationships, not to break them.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, so important, that concept. Can you give an example so that our audience can understand a little bit more about the difference between calling in and
Mm-hmm.
calling out?
Yeah, so I think probably one of the most common microaggressions that people don't realize is a microaggression easily is when in the last med school I was a part of, it was mostly white faculty, and they would be meeting a student who was a minority and had a foreign sounding name, and inevitably they would say, well, where are you from? And of course, the person would answer, Atlanta. And they'd say, no, 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 but where are you really from? And in doing that, again, their intention is they're interested, right, in the person's heritage. But the inadvertent impact is that the person feels othered, right? Like that they somehow stand out in this environment, that they are different from other people. And that's hurtful. It creates an environment where there's not a sense of belonging. And so trying to figure out, so I think that's a great description of intent versus impact, right? That it's not what the person intended to do. Most people who say this are not intending that, and yet it is really having an effect on the learner. And so what I love about the calling in is that, so much in our culture just so polarized, and so much has been so much about cancel culture, right? Like calling people out for doing the wrong thing. That instead of doing that, that I could, because I care about the faculty member who made that statement, I really want them to learn and to be different, that I'm going to call them in. And I'm going to, in an act of love, I'm going to say, I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about, what just happened. And I'm wondering what you meant, when you asked this. And would it be okay if I gave you some feedback about the impact it has? That is so different than calling someone out and canceling what they've said, and calling them racist or ignorant. And so yeah, I think that's the example I give, if that makes sense.
Sure, it does. So is calling in done after the fact, or can it be done when it occurs?
I think that certainly there are pros and cons, right? So I think that the fundamental stance of coming from love and curiosity can be done publicly or privately. And that, there's always a risk of shaming someone if you do it publicly. The downside of always doing it privately, however, is that the rest of the people who witnessed it don't see that it was called in, right? And so they don't learn. First, they don't know that someone's spoken up and advocated for them. But it's also not sending the message that we can talk about these things. And so depending on the person and the relationship and what's been said, I've done both. And I think in an ideal world, we'd be calling in all the time.
Mhm, mhm. And so what you're doing essentially is you're role modeling how to call in to others who are
Exactly.
part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So why do you think that the anti-racism module, which was funded by the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation, why is this module important?
Oh gosh, I'm going to get a little tearful just because,
I didn't mean that.
yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's a good tears to have. I mean, we are, um, the political climate right now is so against diversity, equity, and inclusion. Um, and, there's so much literature about why diversity is important and how, its effect on, well-being, its effect on creativity and innovation, um, its effect on health. And so it's just so hard that we have executive orders that are attacking it. And we, at our institution, we just received a letter. I think that went out to all universities, and I'm going to read from that letter just because it's just so shocking. It says, and I'm quoting, educational institutions have toxically indoctrinated students with the false premise that the United States is built on systemic and structural racism and advanced discriminatory policies and practice. Proponents of these discriminatory practices have attempted to further justify them, particularly during the last 4 years under the banner of DEI, smuggling racial stereotypes and explicit race consciousness into everyday training, programming, and discipline. So this is why this module is so important. We have to continue to do this work, and I really believe that the survival of democracy depends on it.
Mhm, mhm,
And yeah, it's I don't know what to say.
mhm. Yes, thank you. So is there any other information since you completed the module, which I think was probably over a year ago now, that any other information that you might include in your section today?
Mhm. That's a great question. I think we do need a discussion of what, how do we still discuss the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, given now the fear that we will be punished for doing so. Um, and I think that that's about finding community and finding ways that we can speak about it that are true to the principles but don't put us at risk. And I think that adding something about that to the module would be really important now.
Oh, I see. Oh, it's very interesting. So is there anything else that you would like to add as we start wrapping up here?
Yeah, I when I first started my new role at the Netter School, the first day that I worked was Martin Luther King Day, which obviously was also the day of the inauguration. And they the school gave out these bracelets, um, and it says "I still dream,"
Oh,
and so I wear this every day, and I look at it and say it to myself, "I still dream." And I think that was why Dennis applied for this grant. That's why he created all of this, is because he knew that we could change lives, change minds, and I still dream.
oh, thank you so much, Ellen. I really appreciate your talking today with me.
It's such an honor. Thank you for still being willing to talk about this, even in this time and climate, and for allowing me to give voice to some of those feelings.
By all means. It's been great. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Ellen Pearlman talking about the anti-racism module section that she wrote on anti-racism in action on our webcast, Improving Health Equity, Resources and Solutions. I'm Barbara Lewis. Thank you for listening.